This is a reading of Mystical Qabalah by Dion Fortune. I'm going to do chapter 7, the three Supernals, at the request of a gentleman who left a comment in the previous chapter. Read Rishi this. He said, I want more, so I went to check out who Rishi this is. And he's a fellow YouTuber subscribed to Sargon of Akkad. Well, that's interesting. I've seen this guy. I know this guy. And he's done a few videos, which I've listened to. I have no idea why these videos exist, but they're awesome. And so, Rishi, thank you for the comment. I hope you'll enjoy this reading of the Mystical Qabalah. I gave up on it, to be honest with you. Went to Urantia, but since you asked, here it is. All right, so Dion Fortune, the Mystical Qabalah, Chapter 7, the three Supernals. Having considered in outline the development of the three first divine emanations, we are now in a position to obtain a deeper insight into their nature and significance, for we can study them in relation to each other. This is the only way to study the Sephiroth, for a single Sephiroth taken by itself is barren of significance. The Tree of Life is essentially a scheme of relationships, stresses, and reflections. The rabbinical books apply many curious appellations to the Sephiroth, and we learn much from considering these. For every word in these books has a weighty significance, and none are used lightly or for the sake of idle poetic imagery. All are as precise as scientific terms, which in fact is what they are. The meaning of the word Kether, we have already noted, is crown. Chokmah means wisdom, and Bina means understanding. But pendant to those two later letter Sephiroth is a curious and mysterious third, which is never represented in the glyph of the tree. This is the invisible Sephiroth, death, knowledge, and it's said to be formed out of the conjunction of Chokmah and Bina. In other words, crown and wisdom. No, wisdom and understanding. And is situated astride the abyss. This all strikes me as true. And if it doesn't strike you as true, it just doesn't mean you haven't been here. Crowley tells us that Daf is in another dimension to the other Sephiroth and forms the apex of a pyramid of which Kether, Chokmah, and Bina form the three basal angles. To me, Daf presents the idea of realization and consciousness, a waking up of sorts. I'm reminded that apocalypse is Latin for, or apocalypse, I should say, is Latin for transformation. And so that fits. Let's now proceed to elucidate the three supernals according to the method of the Mystical Qabalah, which consists in filling the mind with all the correspondences and symbols assigned thereto and letting contemplation work among them, if you say so. That paragraph was hard to follow. It will be observed that these three and their mysterious fourth all contain symbolism relating to the head, which in the archetypical man represents the highest level of consciousness. When we seek in the rabbinical literature to see what further names may have been applied to them, we find yet more head symbolism applied to Kether. This, although not specifically referred to them, may be taken to embrace the other two supernals also, for they are aspects of Kether on a lower plane. The rabbis called Kether, among other titles which we need not consider now, Arik Anpin, the vast countenance, the white head, the head which is not. The white head I like because, well, that just resonates with me. There's a sharp divide in the way I manage my existence, reality, life, however you want to see it. And it's dichotomized, it's bipolar. It is it has two distinct sides. It's on the grid and off the grid. And I'm on the grid, as it were, about 4 hours a day. Sometimes longer, sometimes not at all. But I'm plugged into this mutual shared matrix of ours. I get to see what the rest of you have been up to. But then the rest of my time I'm off the grid, and it's the same place. It's just the devices are turned off, and I'm in a kind of a psychological Faraday cage, and literal when I can manage it. Mostly meditating and going about the business of being a three-dimensional protrusion. You know how that is. So that time when I'm off the grid, I refer to as white because that's what's in my calendar. That time is white, unfilled, in other words, with this and that. Contrasted with my, say, 9 to 5 Monday through Friday calendar, which is filled with activities of one sort or another. So part of my day is highly regimented, or part of my week is highly regimented, while the other part of my week is unregimented entirely. That's how I find balance. So that time in white, there it is. It's called time in white. Resonates with the whitehead bit. Because that's how I imagine that time as well, as a kind of if there's a heaven of the mind, then that's where I want to be during that time. And blame it maybe on Apple and Steve Jobs, but to me, just when I think about that place, I just see it as all white. Um, and so we move on. The magical symbol of Kether, according to Crowley, is an ancient bearded king seen in profile. MacGregor Mathers says, the symbolism of the vast countenance is that of a profile in which one side only of the countenance is seen, or as it is said in the Qabalah, in him is all right side. The left side being turned towards the unmanifest is for us like the dark side of the moon. Interesting. The left side being turned towards the unmanifest is for us like the dark side of the moon. It's something that never made sense to me. Why is moon not rotating? Like at all, man. How is a moving spherical object suspended in space by gravity rotating around this planet rotating around this planet? There's no wobble? Like, I've seen the scientific explanations and I just don't buy it. If you can illuminate me, please leave a comment. Anyways, but Kether is primarily the crown. Now the crown is not the head, but rests upon it and above it. Therefore Kether cannot be consciousness, but the raw material of consciousness when considered microcosmically, and the raw material of existence when considered macrocosmically. For there is this twofold way of considering the tree, as we have already noted. It can be regarded as the universe and as the soul of man, and these two aspects throw light upon each other. In the words of the Emerald Tablet of Hermes, as above, so below. Okay. What I like the most about this stuff, the phrase like vast countenance, vast continents. Right, okay. A person's face or facial expression, his impenetrable eyes and inscrutable countenance give little away. Okay. Profile, expression, look, appearance, aspect. Mug, puss. Interesting. He would not countenance the use of force, tolerate. Vast countenance. I may be saying that word wrong, but in any case, I like it. I like it a lot. Okay. Kether differentiates into Chokmah and Bina before it achieves phenomenal existence, and these two are called by the Kabbalists Abba, the supernal father, and Amma, the supernal mother. Bina is also called the Great Sea, and Shabbatai, the sphere of Saturn. What beautiful pearl necklace of made of words and letters. The sphere of Saturn, the Shabbatai. What? That's awesome. As we continue, we should find that the Sephiroth are called successively the spheres of the planets, but Bina is the first of the emanations to be so assigned. Kether is called the first whirlings, and Chokmah the sphere of the zodiac. Okay. Now Saturn. Yeah, it's always the best to allow the text to dictate what it is and have you, me, the reader, um, be malleable enough to allow the text to be what it is without too much judgment, because filtering this information through the judgment layer um, demands from it to be something that it is not. And so it's best to see it for what it is to start with, at least, before we judge it. And so this could very well be biased, but and I want to excuse the author, for the time this book was written 100 years ago from a different cultural milieu to a different audience entirely, and we're trying to sort of backfit our understanding of it through, a completely different reality. Well, different enough, at least on the surface. And I say that to just provide a bit of criticism, introducing a lot of these concepts without creating a strong narrative around them. It's makes it for a difficult read and extrapolation of valuable insight and knowledge is what it is. So, why is it important that the sphere of the zodiac phrase? I love the phrase. It's an amazing phrase. Why is it important that it's being introduced or spoken about here now? Anyways, let's keep reading. Now, Saturn is the father of the gods. He's the greatest of the old gods that were the predecessors of the Olympians, over which Jupiter rules. That's very interesting. Jupiter ruled over the predecessors of the Olympians. It's funny how, growing up, we've learned about the Greek pantheon, Zeus and Hera and the rest of them. And we've learned about the predecessors of the Olympians. But it wasn't much. It was sort of like, oh, there were these gods before them, and then there were the Olympians. And to a child, that satisfies the sort of question which is like, where did the Olympians come from? Well, they came from these predecessors. Now sit down and shut up. That would sort of be the modus operandi for the entire construct. And so that would be sufficient. It strikes me as peculiar that they did the same thing with Egypt and Sumer. Who are they? The constructionists of our civilization. The BBC documentaries, the Hollywood movies, the news, the the shared culture that's been piped into our brains for the last 50 years or so. That's the construct That's the they I'm talking about. And anyways, so in a lot of ways, we now more well we I was going to say that we now know more about Sumer than we do about Egypt. Uh, and in school we spend a little bit of time on Sumer as a sort of a seed civilization for the real civilization to come, which is Egypt. Um, and then the rest of us stem from that, um, across Roman, Ottoman, European, British, and then American empires. Sort of Sumer is the seedling from which the Egypt has sprung, and here we are. Well, when I was a child, it Sumer was presented a lot like those predecessors to Olympians. A paragraph. Here's where Egypt comes from, or here's where these ideas about having a civilization to begin with come from, and then from Sumer, and then they were developed into a fully functioning pantheon of Egyptian gods, etc. So I suppose, again, when I was a child, it's like, where did the Egyptians get the idea to do all of these things? And then a teacher can say Sumer and shut up and sit down. And that's the modus operandi of that complex. And so that would be enough. That would be enough. And it was to some extent justified because, teachers at the time didn't know any better. When I was a child, they didn't know any better. But sometime in I think it was 1980s or 1990s, we discovered over 300,000 Sumerian tablets. So we technically have more text um, that's from Sumer than we do from Egypt. And there's a lot of problems with Egyptian history because it was written by British Europeans, um, and they brought their own biases and perspectives and lens and ideas to what was there, and then implanted those viruses into our brains, and now we have to unlearn that. Anyways, so we've translated many of them, and now we can say confidently, we know for sure that Sumer was not didn't provide foundational ideas and inspiration for Egypt. In fact, Sumer provided an entire finished working civilization. Everything that you associate with a civilization, what it means to have one, to be one, Sumer did it first. Courts, public works, universal education, healthcare. I mean, just you name it, they had it first. And in a lot of ways, Egypt was a lower resolution civilization of Sumer. That's what it looks like now. Or at least it has the potential to be that, given the fact that most of the tablets, 300,000 tablets that have been discovered, have not been translated. And so, learn Sumer. I'd like to. I don't know where to begin. Maybe a study group. Hey, let me know if you want to learn Sumer. Anyways. And there's a lot of things like that, but obviously, the question becomes, so what? Turtles all the way down? And yeah, it appears to be that way. Okay. We have then Kether differentiating into an active male potency, Chokmah, and a passive female potency, Bina. And these are placed at the head of the two side columns formed by the vertical alignment of the Sephiroth in their spacing on the Tree of Life. Of these two columns, the left-hand one under Bina is called Severity. The right-hand one under Chokmah is called Mercy. The middle one under Kether is called Mildness, and it is said to be the column of Equilibrium. These two side columns are the two pillars that stand at the entrance to King Solomon's temple and are represented in all lodges of the mysteries. The candidate himself, when he stands between them, is the middle pillar of equilibrium. The candidate himself. That's me. That's you. Here we meet. Excuse me. Here we meet with the idea put forth by Madame Blavatsky that there can be no manifestation without differentiation into the pairs of opposites. The pairs of opposites. Interesting. Opposites I get, but the pairs? Does she mean two of each or one of each? Okay, we'll find out. Kether differentiates its two aspects. Let me try that again. Kether differentiates its two aspects as Chokmah and Bina, and manifestation is in being. Now, in this supernal triangle, the head which is not, the father and the mother, we have the root concept of our cosmogony, and we shall return to it again and again under innumerable aspects, and each time that we return to it, we shall receive illumination. These earlier chapters did not attempt to deal with any of the points exhaustively for reasons already noted. For the student unfamiliar with the subject, and there are very few students who are familiar with it, has not yet got the necessary mental furniture of facts to enable him to appreciate the significance of a more detailed study. Well, isn't that the process of life? Knowledge acquisition, epistemology in general. It's about providing the mental furniture. Yeah, that's a really good way of thinking about it. In due course, we shall begin to arrange it into a house of life and study it in detail. Oh, good, I look forward to that. Bina, the superior mother, as distinguished from Malkuth, the inferior mother, the bride of Microprosopus. Okay, the Isis of nature, the 10th Sephirah. Wow. It's like the mother of dragons. Is two-aspected, and these aspects are distinguished as Amma, the dark sterile mother, and Ima, the bright fertile mother. We have already noted that she is called the Great Sea, Mara, which not only means bitter, but also is the root of Mary. And here we meet again the idea of the mother, at first virgin, and then with child by the Holy Spirit. By the association of Bina with the sea, we are reminded that life had its primordial beginnings in the waters. From the sea arose Venus, the archetypical woman. The association of Saturn suggests the idea of primordial age, before the gods that made the gods had drunk at eve their fill. That's so beautiful. Before the gods that made the gods had drunk at eve their fill. It suggests the most ancient rocks. Within the shady stillness of the veil sat gray-haired Saturn, quiet as a stone. Max Heindel speaks of the Lords of Form as among the earliest phases of evolution, and as inspirational work in my possession, the Cosmic Doctrine speaks of the Lords of Form as the laws of geology. This reminds me of Terence McKenna. I am about to butcher his brilliant ideas, so forgive me while I stumble through it. But one time when he built an entire mansion worth of mental furniture, in my mind, was when he talked about a process at a at a lifespan of the universe. So prior to that, I've conceptualized myself and others as, our allotted time on this planet as somehow impactful, and to some small degree, on a very tiny, isolated, closed-off system scale, that could be true, but looked at it from a lifespan of the universe perspective, it's entirely meaningless. Even the entirety of human history, the last 5,000 years or so, is entirely, well, maybe perhaps not meaningless, but a side effect rather than the point of. And the way Terence McKenna described this is that, and he set it up beautifully with a story about. This is why Terence McKenna is so great. I'm going to try to do it justice. It's coming. I'm vamping a little bit, but it's going to pay off because the story and the circumstances are coming back to my mind now. I think I'll do a better job than if I launched right into it. Anyways, he has an estate in Maui, I believe, in Hawaii. And one day he was meditating, observing the moss that covered the tree in his yard on his property in Hawaii. And the moss has covered most of the base of the tree, about 5 feet worth going up in the air. At least that's how I remember imagining it based on his story. And before the 5 feet off the ground are up, the tree branches into, I believe he said 2, maybe 3 branches, big trunks of the tree. And he noticed that moss didn't gather on one of the branches. It was all over the other 2 branches. And just one branch was completely devoid of moss. It just And he wondered why that may be. And the best he could come up with is perhaps the wind has something to do with it, because it blows from one side, makes it hard to for moss to gather um, on that branch. And as he was meditating on this, that branch fell. And so clearly there was something. It didn't fall because of a perfect equilibrium existed. If it did, it wouldn't fall. Something um, affected the equilibrium. It could be the movement of the planet, or it could be wind. It could be that the branch was rotten. Could be that it's all of that and another million things, um, all transpiring and conspiring together to make this one magical moment happen, that then prompted Terence McKenna to think that, nature knows. Nature may not have our kind of intelligence, but it has its own kind of intelligence, and it's largely invisible to us. And so, if we apply this idea of have nature having some kind of intelligence that's, well, that is more fundamental than ours is. Right? It's more of a subroutine running, and at a Buddha level kind of thing. Um, and perhaps what this is essentially our planet. He suspected it could be fungi, and it's a good suspect. Fungi gave birth to animals and plants. That is our common ancestry, through repeated destructions of our planet of one sort or another. Species that paired with fungi survived. Fungi being mycelial and anti-fragile, and all of these properties that enable it to thrive in almost any environment. I highly recommend Star Trek: The Discovery, the newest one. Um, it's very sort of a fungi forward kind of a TV show. You should watch it. Um, well, so does nature suspect that the branch of the tree is that we regard as our present reality is about to fall off? Um, does nature know that the sun has a finite um, expiration date? Well, let's assume that it does. Um, our entire existence could be nature's attempt to get itself off of this planet and out of this solar system in order to do what it does, which is survive. Um, and so that was an idea put forth by the late, great Terence McKenna that really expanded my thinking room. My thinking room went from, maybe a few thousand years, maybe a few 100,000, maybe a couple of few million, but not, you know, but I never thought about a kind of a unconscious subroutine, such as the one that Terence McKenna spoke about, uh, that could be going on. That that is the point, and that the rest of it is just sort of you know side effect. So the whole story of Noah's Ark is really instruction. And it's not the first of its kind. It's not the last of its kind. It's not like we don't have proclivity for preserving ourselves. one might say that is all the proclivity we have. We've already stored seeds and plants and whatnot in remote areas for future protection. If we're capable of leaving this biodome, well, it would be great to work on both fronts, both leaving and preserving. But anyways, that was quite the trip we took. Okay, let's see, where were we? Okay. The laws of geology. Yes, well, yeah. So there we are. I don't know what the laws of geology is about, but I imagine it's about something like what Terence McKenna described. And I hope that sort of gives more meat to the bones of these words and phrases that we're reading. Considering again the symbolism of the two lateral columns of the tree, we see Chokmah and Bina as force and form, the two units of manifestation. It would not profit us to go more deeply into the endless ramifications of this symbolism at the present moment, for it is carrying us beyond the three Sephiroth we have already studied. Let us proceed to a further consideration of the mysterious Dath, which never appears on the tree and to which no deity name or angelic host is assigned, and which has no mundane symbol in planet or element, as have all the other stations of the tree. So, for those of you who may have missed the previous chapters, let's pull up this puppy right here. So, no, let's embiggen it a little bit. So there's an invisible Sephiroth, and it's usually placed here. Oh yeah, yeah, and there's actually a little circle right there. I didn't even notice it before. Yeah, see that? That's cool. Yeah, so that's the invisible Duff that they keep talking about. It's funny, like it's one of the first things you learn as you start studying the Tree of Life is the secret Sephiroth. That's what is that? Anyways, Dath is produced by the conjunction of Chokmah and Bina, as has been already noted. The supernal father, Abba, marries the supernal mother, Amma, and Dath is the Ishi. Oh, it's like an inner child. I see. Now, Dath is called some curious things by the Kabbalists. We will note a few of them. Oh, let's see if I'm on the right track. In verse 38 of the book of Concealed Mystery, Mather's English translation from the Latin translation of Nor von Rosenroth, it says, "For father and mother are perpetually conjoined in Yesod, the foundation, the ninth Sephirah, but concealed under the mystery of Dath, or knowledge." And in verse 40 we read concerning Dath, "The man that shall say, I am the Lord, he descendeth." Yod, the 10th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, is the foundation of knowledge of the Father. But all things are called Byodo, that is, all things are applied to Yod concerning which this discourse is. Wow. All things cohere in the tongue which is concealed in the mother, that is, through Dath or knowledge, whereby wisdom is combined with understanding, and the beautiful path, Tifereth, the 6th Sephiroth, with his bride the queen, Malkuth, the 10th Sephiroth. And this is the concealed idea or soul pervading the whole emanation, since it is open for that which proceeded from itself. That is, Da'ath is itself the beautiful path, but also the inner, whereto Moses referred, and that path lieth hid within the mother, and is the medium of its conjunction. Okay? When it is noted that Yad is identical with the Lingam in the Hindu system, and that Kathar, Dath, and the beautiful path, Tifereth, the six Sephirah, are in line on the middle pillar of the tree, which equates with the spine in man, the microcosm, and that Kundalini is coiled in Yesod, also on the middle pillar. We shall see that we have here an important key for those who are equipped to use it. Wow, that was a laborious paragraph and a half. I'm going to extract Kundalini from it just to mention it. Stop masturbating. That's the bottom line. If you do, don't finish. If you finish, that's fine. Just stop again. And if you manage to stop for a few weeks, magical things will start to happen. Your energy is going to be focused. It's just incredible. I highly recommend it. You'll be able to look people in the eye. There's another one. It's just incredible, man. And then the other thing I want to say, going back to this inner, the beautiful path. There was something. I can't find it now, but hang on, I'm gonna find it. I don't know what gave me the idea, but it was something in the essence of this chapter, perhaps. Or maybe it was this: the man that shall say, I am the Lord's, he descendeth. Maybe it was that phrase. Um, so, so what they're basically saying, and I'm simplifying, synthesizing, and maybe applying a bit of modern speak to it. This is really about um, developing fully your feminine and masculine energy and allowing them to have sex, metaphorically speaking, to give birth to the inner child, your inner child. That is the Dath. And the idea here is to let your inner child loose onto your canvas of choice. Mine happens to be sound and moving images and words and music and other things, an actual canvas, when I can manage. The canvas doesn't matter. What matters is that you give birth to your inner child and let it loose on the canvas of your choice. And Well, so the way it connects for me to the inner child is that to our child, there is no difference between uh, them and Lord God, everything. Um, to a child, they are all there is. Um, their needs are um, take priority over all of ours, yours, mine. Uh, they are the thing around which we coalesce. Uh, or if we don't, suffer for it. And in order for someone to be that selfish, they have to think of themselves as the only thing in the universe. And, that pretty well describes a child. Um, I suppose a lot of what happens past the age of 2 is us learning to be less selfish. Um, and perhaps uh, being selfish is what this is about. Um, but being selfish about the right things, I suppose is the process of learning. Um, far be it for me to advocate selfishness as a virtue, um, but just like every light has its shadow, every shadow has its light, and there's a good side to selfishness, and it can be applied properly. And this is what it means to balance things out. I'm selfish about my peace of mind. I don't want to give it to anyone. If I can help it, if I can manage it. Well, so that's what I got from that paragraph. In the Greater Holy Assembly, verse 566, Mather's translation, we read concerning the head of microprosopus, whose whole body is being taken as a glyph of the cosmos. From the third cavity there goes forth 1,000 times 1,000 conclaves and assemblies, wherein doth knowledge is contained and dwelleth. And the hollow place of this cavity is between the other two cavities, and all these conclaves are filled from either side. This is that which is written in Proverbs, and in knowledge doth shall the conclaves be filled. And those three are expanded over the whole body on this side and on that, and with them does the whole body cohere, and the body is contained by them on every side, and through the whole body are they expanded and diffused. The hell you say? Okay. When it is recalled that Dath is situated at the point where the abyss bisects the middle pillar, and that up the middle pillar lies the path of the arrow, the way by which consciousness goes when the psychic rises on the planes, and that here also is Kundalini. We see that in Dath is the secret of both generation and regeneration, the key to the manifestation of all things through the differentiation into pairs of opposites and their union in a third. I don't know why I feel like your ranch is more accessible than this thing. And your ranch is not very accessible. Thus doth the tree unfold its secret to the Kabbalist, if you say so. The second triangle upon the tree of life is formed of the Sephiroth Chesed, Gabura, and Tiferoth. Chesed is formed by the overflowing of Bina, and is situated in the right-hand pillar of mercy immediately below Chokmah, the angle of the lightning flash, which is used to indicate the course of the emanations upon the tree, slopes downwards to the right across the glyph from Bina at the head of the pillar of severity to Chesed, which occupies the middle section of the pillar of mercy. Then the flash turns and goes horizontally across the glyph back again to the pillar of severity in the middle section, of which is found the Sephiroth Gabura. Down at the right slopes once more the symbol of emanating force, and indicates the Sephiroth Tifereth, which occupies the very center of the tree in the pillar of mildness or equilibrium. These three Sephiroth constitute the next functional triangle we have to consider, and although we do not intend to go exhaustively into their symbolism until we have completed our schematic survey of the whole system, it is necessary to say enough to give some clue to their significance and enable them to be assigned to a place in the concept we are building up. Okay? This concept is so vast and so infinite in its elaboration of detail that to attempt to teach it exhaustively from A to Z must end in confusion. We're off to a heady start. Only gradually can it reveal its significance to the student as one aspect interprets another. My method of teaching the tree may not be ideal from the point of view of systematic thought, but I believe it is the only one which will enable the beginner to get the hang of the subject. Wonder if this was used 100 years ago. Maybe it was. Wow, that's... you wouldn't put it in quotes these days, because that's just acceptable phrase, but maybe 100 years ago it was, I don't know, worthy of quotation, I guess. So this relates to what I was saying earlier about my personal biases and how I thought this could be presented better. It really is the supremacy of the teacher. We have a choice to be taught or not to be taught. But we cannot, should not, ought not impose judgment before Judgment Day. And so I apologize, Dion Fortune. I am in your good hands. It was upon the tree that I got my own mystical training, and I have lived and moved and had my being in its company for a good many years now, so I feel that I am competent to speak upon it from the point of view of practical mysticism, for I know from my own experience the difficulties of getting hold of the Kabbalistic system, so intricate, abstract, and voluminous, and yet so comprehensive and satisfactory when once it is mastered. Whence it is mastered. Before we can consider the second triangle of the tree as a unit, we must know the meaning of its component Sephiroth. Chesed means mercy of love. It is also called Gedulah, greatness or magnificence. And to it is assigned the sphere of the planet Jupiter. Geburah means strength. It is also called Pachad, fear. To it is assigned the sphere of the planet Mars. Tefereth means beauty, and to it is assigned the sphere of the sun. When the gods of the various pagan pantheons are being correlated with the spheres on the tree, it will be found that the sacrificed gods invariably come on the Tefereth, and for this reason it has been called the Christ Center in the Christian Kabbalah. Very trippy sentences. We now have sufficient material to make a survey of the second triangle. Jupiter, the beneficent ruler and lawgiver, is balanced by Mars, the warrior, the fiery and destructive force, and the two are equilibrated in Tefereth, the redeemer. In the supernal triangle, we see the primary Sephiroth emanating a pair of opposites which express the two sides of its nature. Chokmah, force, and Binah, form, masculine and feminine Sephiroth, respectively. In the second triangle, we have the pairs of opposites which find their equilibrium in a third, placed upon the middle pillar of the tree. From this, we deduce that the first triangle derives its significance from that which lies behind it, and the second triangle derives its significance from that into which it issues forth. In the first triangle, we find a representation of the creative forces of the substance of the universe. In the second, we have a representation of governing forces of evolving life. In Chesed is the wise and kindly king, the father of his people, organizing his realm, building up industry, fostering learning, and bringing the gifts of civilization. In Geburah, we have a warrior king leading his people in battle, defending his kingdom from the assaults of the enemy, extending his boundaries by conquest, punishing crime, and destroying evildoers. In Tifereth, we have the Savior sacrificed upon the cross for the salvation of his people, and thereby bringing Geburah into equilibrium with Gedulah or Chesed. Here we find the sphere of all the beneficent sun gods and the healing gods. Thus we see that the mercies of Gedulah and the severity of Geburah unite for the healing of the nations. Behind Tifereth, traversing the tree, is drawn Peroketh, the veil of the temple, the analog on a lower plane of the abyss which separates the three supernals from the rest of the tree. Like the abyss, the veil marks a chasm in consciousness. The mode of mentation. What is mentation? Mentation. Whoa! Mind plus ation. Mentation. Technical term for mental activity. The mode of mentation. That is a brilliant word. All right. The mode of mentation on one side of the chasm differs in kind from the mode of mentation prevailing upon the other. Tifereth is the highest sphere to which normal human consciousness can rise. Tifereth is the highest sphere to which normal human consciousness can rise. You know, I always wondered what the upper limit is. And of course, now we're faced with a belief, if this is true or not. There's a lot of reason for it to be true. It rests on some solid foundation of tradition, mysticism, and history, and so on. On the other hand, it could be a clever ruse, because nothing is like it seems. If you don't try, you can never know. So, how do you know that you've reached Tifereth? Well, these are all great questions. Let's keep reading. When Philip said to our Lord, "Show us the Father," Jesus replied, "He that hath seen me hath seen the Father." Huh. All the human mind can grow of Kether is its reflection in Tifereth, the Christian center, Christ center, the sphere of the sun. Peroketh is the veil of the temple which was rent asunder at the crucifixion. Rent asunder. It's beautiful phrases. I keep going back to this. It's a bit of the text demands a machete, but if you plow your way through the jungle of 100 years of cultural separation, there's some gems in here along the way, man. And this rent asunder is just beautiful. We now come in our brief preliminary survey to the third triangle composed of the Sephiroth, Netzek, Hod, and Yesod. I am pronouncing these words so wrong. I know it, but that's okay. Netzach, I hope, is the basal Sephirah of the Pillar of Mercy. Hod is the basal Sephiroth of the Pillar of Severity, and Yesod is upon the middle pillar of mildness or equilibrium in direct alignment with Kether and Tifereth. As I'm naming these things, it would be really good to flash some cards highlighting which of these is the thing I'm actually reading so that the reader can become familiar with it. Hey, I'm not promising anything. I don't think I can do it. Well, I'll tell you what would make me do it. Contributing to my Patreon. Well, that's it. I need the first Patreon benefactor. Could be $1. It could be one time $1. Could be a monthly $1 would be amazing. Just to sort of turn the engine on Patreon, because that's the plan here. It's the plan is to send you, my dear YouTube viewer, to my Patreon, and thus subsist. And so, yeah, it would be really great to have this sort of reworked with this kind of thing. As I'm going through the whole motion, highlighting which one of these am I actually talking about. I feel like that's what I need in order to better understand the text. So maybe that's what you need as well. And, well, I'm prepared to do the disparate amount of work here. Any activity on my Patreon account will result in me redoing this video with, using some illustrations to help the concept sink in better. So the rest is up to you, universe. All right, so we now come in our brief preliminary survey to the third triangle composed of the Sephiroth, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. I've read that paragraph already. Okay, so the meaning of Netzach is victory, and to it is assigned the sphere of the planet Venus. The meaning of Hod is glory, and to it is assigned the sphere of the planet Mercury. The meaning of Yesod is foundation, and to it is assigned the sphere of the moon. While the second triangle might not inaptly be termed the ethical triangle, the third may well be called the magical triangle. And if we assign to Kether the sphere of the tree in one, the undivided unity, and to Tifereth the sphere of the Redeemer or Son, we may be justified in referring to Yesod the sphere of the Holy Spirit, the Enlightener. The Enlightener. The Enlightener. The Enlightener. Huh, I like them both. This is an attribution of the Christian Trinity that fits better upon the tree than its assignation. Assignation. What does assignation mean? An appointment to meet someone in secret, typically one made by lovers. His assignation with an older woman. Ooh, the allocution or attribution of someone or something as belonging to something. Assignation. Wow. I was going to gloss over this word, but it's so good. Command, appointment to office, assign, rendezvous, date, appointment, meeting, literary tryst. Ooh, tryst. Okay. To the three supernals, which bring the Son in the place of Abba the Father, and the Holy Spirit in the place of Amma the Mother, and is obviously irrelevant and productive of innumerable discrepancies in the correspondence and symbolism. In this we see an example of the value of the tree as a method of counter-checking vision or meditation. Correct attributions fit upon the tree through endless ramifications of symbolism, as we saw when considering Bina as the mother. Incorrect symbolism breaks down and reveals its bizarre associations at the first attempt to follow out a chain of correspondences. Okay, wrong foundation. Incorrect symbolism. It's the wrong foundation. It's the sand. You don't want to build there. I got it. It's amazing what ramifications of association chains can be followed when the attribution is correct. It seems as if it were only the extent of our knowledge which limits the length of the chain that can be linked logically together. It will extend through science, art, mathematics, and the epochs of history, through ethics, psychology, and physiology. It was this peculiar method of using the mind which in all probability gave the ancients their premature knowledge of natural science, knowledge which has had to await the invention of instruments of precision for its confirmation. I like this. I like that Dion Fortune frames mystics as ahead of their time. Well, because it's so obviously true. And juxtapose that with our propensity to deny a person's mystical nature, and then make fun of on the rare occasions that we do recognize it. However, it strikes me as obvious that it behooves me to look for it. Because, wow, I mean, what an instruction set to obtain. You know? We get clues to this method in the dream analysis of analytical psychology. We might describe it as the symbol using power of the subconscious mind. It is an instructive experiment to toss a mass of irrelevant symbolism into the mind and watch it sort itself out in meditation upon the tree, rising into consciousness in long association chains like dream analysis. Netzach is the sphere of the goddess of nature, Venus. Had is the sphere of Mercury, the Greek analog of the Egyptian Thoth, a lord of books and learning. Observing their opposition, we shall expect to find two different aspects represented in them, these finding their equilibrium in a third, Yesod, the sphere of Luna. We see then a triangle composed of the Lady of Nature, the Lord of Books, and the Mistress of Witchcraft. In other words, subconsciousness and superconsciousness correlate in physicism. Psychism. Correlate in psychism. I don't know what subconsciousness and superconsciousness correlate in psychism means, but it's such a beautiful sentence. Well, I suppose if I had to infer what the author means, psychism could be interpreted as a kind of vibration, a balance, balancing yourself between within and without, subconscious, superconscious. That's the correlate thing. That's my best interpretation. Anyways, anyone who is familiar with practical mysticism knows that there are three paths of superconsciousness. I don't even know what superconsciousness is. Might be source, or like the Akashic record, or what often people refer to as the source. Devotional mysticism, which correlates with Tifereth, nature mysticism of the inebriating Dionysian type, which equates with the Venus sphere of Netzach, and intellectual mysticism of the occult type, which equates with Hod, the sphere of thought, lord of magic. Tifereth, as my windows are open. That was nothing. This morning during my meditation, there were an orchestra of noises on one side of my room where the window is open, and there was another orchestra of noises on the other side of my room where the other window was open. And the two orchestras were annoying to begin with, but then they weren't even playing the same song. They were playing two different songs. And so the clash of the noise orchestras was just amazing. And of course, at first I took it the way you're supposed to take it. An opportunity to practice balance and mindfulness and stillness in the face of such chaos. Sound chaos. But very quickly I started wondering when I'm going to get annoyed, and then very quickly I got annoyed. But then I managed to transcend that annoyance. It was past the annoyance that I managed to ignore it best. Anyways, Tifereth, as will be seen by reference to the diagram of the tree, belongs to a higher plane than any member of the third triangle. Yesod, on the other hand, is drawing very near to the sphere of Earth. To Yesod are assigned all the deities that have the moon in their symbolism. Luna herself, Haket with her dominion over evil magic, and Diana with her presidency over childbirth. Interesting. The physical moon, Yesod in Azia, as the Kabbalists would say, with its 28-day cycle, correlates with the reproductive cycle of the human female. If the symbolism of the lunar crescent be traced through the various pantheons, it will be found that the deities associated with it are predominantly female. It is interesting to note, in confirmation of our assignation of the Holy Spirit to Yesod, that according to MacGregor Mathers, the Holy Spirit is a feminine force. He says in Qabalah Unveiled, page 22, we are usually told that the Holy Spirit is masculine, but the word ruach, spirit, is feminine, as appears from the following passage of the Sefer Yetzirah. Ashath, feminine, not Akkad, masculine. Ruach, Elohim, Sheim. One is she, the spirit of the Elohim of life. When we consider the middle pillar as referring to levels of consciousness, we shall find further confirmation of this view. Another interesting thing is that Elohim in itself is a pluralized version of the word. So it's not she, it's she's. Which then, I suppose, creates an opportunity for some hymns. There remains, for our final consideration, the Sephirah Malkuth, the kingdom of earth. This Sephirah differs from the others in several respects. Firstly, it is not part of any equilibrated triangle, but is said to be the receptacle of the influences of all the others. Secondly, it is a fallen Sephiroth, for it was cut off from the rest of the tree by the fall, and the coils of this stooping dragon arising from the world of shells, the kingdoms of unbalanced force, separated from its brethren. Behind the shoulder of the queen, the bride of Microprosopus, Malkuth. Is there a more explanation of what this is? Let's see. No. What about just this word? Yeah, I hear you, dictionary. The serpent rears his head, and here is said to be the place of severest judgments. Yeah. The sphere of Malkuth abuts upon the hells of the averse Sephiroth, the Alephath, or evil demons. It is the firmament whereby Elohim separated the supernal waters of Bina from the infernal waters of Leviathan. Okay. The signification, I can come back and say a few words about this, but let me see, what do we have left here? Not much. Okay, so let me say a few words about this. Okay, behind the shoulder of the queen, the bride of Malkuth, The serpent rears his head, and here is said to be the place of severest judgment. The sphere of Malkuth abuts upon the hells of the averse Sephiroth, the Alephath, or evil demons. It is the firmament whereby Elohim separated the supernal waters of Bina from the infernal waters of Leviathan. Okay, so let's talk about these two parts. So the word firmament is a biblical word, and it describes a dome around the earth. The way to think about it in scientific terms is to think about Van Allen's belt that NASA had to shield itself from the radiation as they were going to the moon, or something like that, roughly. There's a lot of debate on the accuracy of all of this. But Van Allen belt is a radiation belt around the Earth, and well, I mean, it's same as firmament that's described in the Bible. It's the heavens or the sky, especially when regarded as a tangible thing, right? A sphere or world viewed as a collection of people. Let's see. The sky, heavens, sky, literally view. Okay. Well, you get the idea. In biblical cosmology, the firmament is the structure above the atmosphere conceived as a vast solid dome. Right. According to the Genesis creation narrative, God created the firmament to separate the waters above the earth from the waters below the earth. The world is anglicized from Latin firmamentum. The word is anglicized from Latin firmamentum, which appears in the Vulgate, the late 4th century Latin translation of the Bible. That's cool. I didn't know that last part. So, yeah, firmament. So, oh yeah, and there's also a show named Dome that has a firmament erected around it. There's a lot of shows based on it. Well, and so as above, so below, there's also a kind of a firmament separation inside of us, where the sphere of Malkuth abuts upon the hells of the averse Sephiroth, the Alephath, or evil demons. It is the firmament whereby Elohim separated the supernal waters of Bina from the infernal waters of Leviathan. They're talking about, like this lower part, I guess, right? Oh yeah, so there's the demon part. And so this is also roughly related to a chakra system, or maybe directly related to chakra system. Said differently, it's related to energy centers, and this could be like where this is felt energetically, where this Sephiroth is felt is in the base of the stomach, right above the coccyx. And for me, it was a physical sensation when this chakra opened up. There was a great turbulence. I was constipated for a few days prior to that. It ended up being a kind of a, as above, so below, so, both psychological constipation as well as physiological constipation. And I mean, talk about a rumble in the belly. It gave me a fright how turbulent it was. Like, for a moment, I thought there was something seriously wrong with me. And I didn't even understand what it was when it was happening. But in any case, with that physical sensation came a story. And I'll share the story with you guys. The way the separation with the spheres and the way that the breaking through that chakra was experienced mentally in my inner world was something like this. I stepped, you know, like in the Matrix, there was a hallway filled with doors. It was that kind of thing. I stepped into a hallway filled with doors, and I found a door with security cameras, and the security cameras were pointed at the ninth circle of hell. And on the security cameras, I saw Satan, devil, Lucifer, Nosferatu. No, not Nosferatu. He's a vampire. Definitely a Luciferian type, though. Well, you know, the big red guy. I saw him on the screen, and he was actually, and was the surprising part, in a cage. Not only was he trapped in a cage, but he was crying in a fetal position in his own piss and tears. Around him were bastards. That's what I called them. But they were evil demons. That's who they were. They were minor devils, if you will. They were his minions in many ways. So, anyways, I went down there, and I asked him, "Why are you in a fetal position crying? You're Satan. You can, like, you know, this is your domain, man. You can do whatever you want." And he kind of looked at me as if he never got the idea. And he was like, "Well, okay, I'm at the end of my rope, so I might as well try it." He called one of the bastards over. They were facing outward. They had their backs turned to him because there's a hordes of other bastards who want to control the devil, who want to entrap him. He controls, Satan controls the world, is what they were thinking. Anyways, this Satan thought, well, I might as well try it. Calls the one of the bastards over. He comes close enough to the cage, and I didn't expect this to happen. Like, bro, he's still Satan. Like, don't you see how big and red and scary he is? You're getting too cocky, getting so close to that cage. But he did, and Satan grabbed him, squeezed him until his head popped off, and then drank his blood. And then he just ripped through the bars, and caught a few of them, you know, ripped them in half. At one point, he was exhausted, like with his hands on his knees, uh, trying to catch his breath, and then ran around for a little longer. And well, anyways, then I went and took a shit, uh, and I was no longer constipated. So that's how the chakra opened up for me, and that's what preceded it, constipation, um, and that was the narrative that um, wrote itself on the canvas of my mind as that this was happening, communicated straight from the source, I suppose, or this um, what's been super consciousness, I suppose, kind of thing. Um, and well, that's certainly been interesting. And when I read these words, that's that is the personal experience that relates to it, and then this has had a pretty profound effect on how well many fucks I give, for example. Um, uh, um, you know, it's all you, you know what I'm trying to say is that um, if you watch the movie um, The Matrix, uh, and you think that you're one of those characters, uh, you're you're not there yet. Um, but if you know that you're all of those characters, then well, you're getting there. If you know that you're both the betrayer and the wizard and the architect and the love interest and the protector and the intellect and so on. And so, you know, what I'm trying to say, I guess, is that um, it was a profound moment in having my own shadow released. Uh, and I'm capable of unspeakable things and evils and actions, and I know that now. And so part of what I do is walking in this reality cautiously, without doing more harm than good, because I am capable of great harm. And so, best to be a little cautious. I hope you enjoyed that excursion. The signification of the Cliffoth must be considered fully in due course, but having referred to them here, in order to explain the position of Malkuth, we must say something further in order to render the explanation intelligible. The Cliffoth, singular Cliffa, an immodest woman or harlot, are the evil or averse Sephiroth, each an emanation of unbalanced force from its corresponding sphere upon the holy tree. These emanations took place during the critical periods of evolution when the Sephiroth were not in equilibrium. For this reason, they are referred to as the kings of unbalanced force, the kings of Edom, who ruled before there was a king in Israel, as the Bible puts it. And in the words of Sephora Geniutha, the book of concealed mystery, Mather's translation, for before there was equilibrium, countenance beheld not countenance. Ha! And the kings of ancient time were dead, and their crowns were found no more, and the earth was desolate. This sounds like it's referring to extermination, destruction, annihilation, an annihilation that gave rise to you and me. We have now completed our preliminary survey of the Tree of Life and the arrangement of the 10 holy Sephiroth thereon. We also have some clue to their significance and have been given a hint or two of the manner in which the mind works when it uses these cosmic symbols for its meditations. Consequently, we are now in position to assign each fresh bit of information to its correct position in our scheme, in our scheme. We are building upon the jigsaw puzzle with the knowledge of the outlines of picture. Crowley had aptly likened the tree to a card index file, in which each symbol is an envelope. This is a simile which it would be difficult to improve upon. In the course of our studies, we shall begin to fill these filing cases and to find the cross-indexing among them, indicated by the appearance of same symbol in other associations. Well, Rishi, there's chapter 7. I hope you enjoyed it. Let's see where that puts us. Okay, so that puts us about a little more than halfway through. Halfway through. Part 1. Well, we'll leave it at that for now. See what the future holds for us. Rishi, thank you for co-creating this reality with me. And thank you for making yourself known, raising your hand, and interacting with me. I hope you've enjoyed that reading.